The hall of the Galactic Council shimmered with gold and glass as if the universe itself had gathered to watch one man fall. Commander Eli Vance stood in the center of that great chamber surrounded by alien dignitaries, whose eyes glowed with colors he could not name. His wrists were bound by energy cuffs and his uniform was torn, but his back was straight. He looked neither proud nor broken, just human. The Council Chancellor rose from his floating throne, his voice layered like metal and smoke. Human Commander Eli Vance, you are charged with defiance of Council law. You interfered in a restricted system. You saved your people when you were ordered to abandon them. His words echoed like a verdict already carved in stone. Eli lifted his head slowly. His voice was calm but heavy with everything he'd endured. I saved civilians, not criminals, he said. If that is a crime to you, then your laws are rotten. The chamber erupted in murmurs, some of disgust, some of uneasy admiration. The Chancellor's eyes flickered cold blue. You humans still speak of courage as if it changes the law. You still believe your fragile flesh matters. Around him, alien guards with bone armor moved closer, their shadows crossing over the human's face. The Chancellor pointed a clawed finger. Then courage will be your punishment. You will have your chance to prove it on Ragnar 9. The name dropped into the room like a bomb. Even the alien delegates fell silent. Ragnar 9. A world so hostile it was called a living tomb, where storms could melt steel and beasts could tear war machines in half. No prisoner had ever lasted more than a single day there. The Chancellor's mouth curved into a thin smile. Exile begins immediately. You will be dropped alone. Without aid, without weapons, your survival will serve as proof of human arrogance. 2 guards seized him, dragging him toward the exit tunnel where a ship awaited. Eli did not resist. His boots echoed against the metal floor, each step sounding like a farewell to everything he had ever known. As the great doors closed behind him, he caught one last glimpse of the Council, 1,000 alien faces watching with hunger, amusement, and something else beneath it all, fear. Hours later, the prison transport cut through the black sea of stars, its engines humming like a heartbeat in a coffin. Eli sat in the containment bay staring through the narrow window as the blue glow of Ragnar 9 grew larger, a planet of storms and lightning veins. The pilot's voice came through the speaker. Drop zone in 2 minutes, human. No one will come for you. And then the channel went silent. The pod detached, a sudden plunge through fire and atmosphere. Eli braced himself as alarms screamed. Heat wrapped around him. Metal screamed back at the wind. The pod crashed through a forest of black trees and shattered into a crater of ash and glowing dirt. He staggered out coughing, the air thick with ash and the smell of burning metal. Around him, the landscape stretched in every direction, alive yet hostile. Mountains twisted like claws and rivers hissed with acid. The sky a whirl of red storms, the planet breathed, and he could feel it watching him. He tore a strip from his uniform and wrapped his bleeding arm. Scanning the horizon, a roar thundered from somewhere beyond the ridge, deep and ancient. Not an animal's voice, but something older. Instinct told him to run, yet curiosity anchored his feet. He found what remained of the pod and pulled out the emergency knife, his only tool. The comms were dead. The survival beacon useless. The Council had made sure of that. Night fell like ink poured across the land. The stars above Ragnar 9 were strange, too close, too bright, and they moved as if alive. He climbed into the hollow of a fallen crystal tree and made fire from shards that burned cold blue. Each sound in the dark felt like a whisper, each shadow like a living thing. He thought of Earth, of the oceans he would never see again, of the faces he failed to save. The thought pressed against his chest until he had to speak aloud just to hear a human voice. You're still alive, Eli, that's something, he whispered to himself. The wind answered with a screech that rattled his bones. The ground beneath him trembled, and from the black mist emerged shapes with gleaming scales, eyes that shimmered like molten gold. They watched him from the edge of the firelight, dozens of them, crawling beasts with elongated bodies and clawed limbs. The largest stepped forward, its breath heavy enough to bend the flame. Eli gripped the knife, his heart steady but ready. I didn't come here to die quietly, he murmured. The creature lunged and he rolled aside, slashing across its neck, the blade barely cutting through, but enough to draw dark smoke instead of blood. It roared in confusion more than pain. The others shrieked and vanished into the dark as the fire flared higher. Eli stood panting, his hands shaking but his eyes alive. He looked at the sky, the red lightning painting his face, and something inside him hardened. If this is how you want it, he said quietly, Then let's see how long a human can last. When dawn came, the storm clouds broke for a moment and light touched his face. Ragnar the Nine revealed its true form. Vast plains of glass. Skeletons of old war machines half buried in sand. Rivers glowing like veins of molten light, and far beyond, a black mountain pulsing faintly as if something beneath it slept. Eli stared toward it, feeling an unseen call. A pull stronger than fear. He began to walk step by step. Across the burning earth, the planet groaned around him. The wind carried whispers that almost formed words. He didn't know if it was madness or something alive. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. The Council had sent him here to die, yet somewhere deep within him a quiet voice rose, a voice that sounded a lot like defiance. "They think humans break," he whispered. "They have no idea what we become." Above the clouds, hidden in orbit, a Council surveillance probe recorded every step, and in the dark corridors of the galactic hall, alien eyes watched in silence as the human they had cast away began to walk toward the heart of a world that killed gods. Their laughter faded, replaced by something else. A quiet dread that none of them would yet admit. The exile had begun, and the Deathworld had just met its first human. The storm had not stopped for 3 days. The wind screamed through the canyons like a living thing, tearing at the rocks and dragging the sand into spirals that glowed red under the lightning. Commander Eli Vance moved through that chaos with nothing but a knife and a strip of torn metal that once belonged to his crashed pod. His uniform was soaked with sweat and ash, every breath burned like swallowing smoke. But his steps were steady. He was not walking to escape the storm. He was walking to learn the rhythm of this world that wanted him dead. He had stopped thinking of time and days or nights. The red sun rose and fell, but the light never truly changed. The air shimmered with heat even in the dark. He found pools of liquid beneath glowing roots, and though his mind warned him against it, his thirst won. The taste was bitter, but it did not kill him. He marked the places where he found water with rocks, mapping the land inside his memory. The planet was teaching him, each scar, each near-death moment carving lessons into his flesh. By the 5th night, he built a shelter against a cliffside, using broken hull pieces from his pod. When the lightning struck nearby, the metal glowed blue and hummed. He listened to that hum for hours. It was not random. It pulsed like code, repeating patterns as if the planet itself were whispering. He didn't know if he was losing his mind or if something down there was alive. Still, he answered it, whispering into the storm, "If you're alive, you're not the only one." When he slept, his dreams were filled with flashes, mountains collapsing into seas of fire, creatures with wings of crystal screaming into endless skies, and a shadow walking among them. Not hunting, not hunted, simply watching. When he woke, he felt that same presence watching him now. At dawn, he followed the hum deeper into the canyon where the air turned cooler, and the storm above was distant thunder. He found strange ruins half buried in the black sand, towers carved from obsidian and marked with spirals that seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. The architecture was old, older than the Council, older than any civilization he had studied. It felt wrong in shape, yet perfect in symmetry, and in the center of the ruins stood a stone arch humming faintly. He stepped closer, running his hand along the cold surface. The markings pulsed faintly under his fingers like veins reacting to touch. Then the ground trembled, a low rumble that came from everywhere at once. Dust fell from the cliffs as something vast stirred beneath. Eli froze, scanning the shadows, and then he saw it. A shape emerging through the dust, four-legged, armored in plates of dark obsidian that reflected lightning like mirrors. Its eyes glowed silver, deep and calm, not with hunger but intelligence. It was the creature he had glimpsed that first night, the one whose roar silenced storms. He gripped his knife, though he knew it was useless. The creature stepped closer, each movement fluid and precise, like it was testing the air between them. The ground vibrated with its heartbeat. He felt small before it, but not weak. It lowered its head, staring at him as if waiting for something, and he realized with a chill that it was listening to the same hum he had followed. The creature's gaze shifted past him to the stone arch, and a low growl rolled from its chest. The arch answered with a faint echo, almost like a call. The sound made Eli's vision blur, and for a moment he saw images, flashes of an ancient war, cities burning, and these beasts standing guard over something buried deep in the planet's core. He stumbled back, gasping. The vision faded, and when his eyes cleared, the creature was gone. Only its footprints remained, burned into the sand like molten glass. That night he sat by his cold fire staring at those prints that led nowhere. He whispered to himself, "You're not a monster, are you?" And though no voice answered, the wind changed direction, carrying the faintest sound, a rumble that almost resembled a reply. In the days that followed, Eli searched for it again, tracing paths through volcanic plains and jagged caves. Each step closer to the mountain he had seen in the distance, the humming grew louder the nearer he got, pulsing through the soles of his boots and the walls around him. He began to understand that this was no ordinary world. It was not merely hostile, it was sentient, alive in a way no human language could describe. He began to talk to it like an old friend. "You've seen more death than I ever will," he murmured once, "but I'm not here to fight you. I just want to understand why they fear you so much." He found a cavern that opened beneath the mountain like a mouth, the entrance ringed with symbols matching those on the ruins. He hesitated, then stepped inside. The darkness swallowed him whole. The hum became a deep vibration in his chest, and faint blue light bled from the walls as if the stone itself was alive. Then he saw movement, slow and deliberate. The creature again, larger than before, its body framed by the glowing light. It looked down at him, eyes calm but unblinking, and Eli felt something beyond fear, a strange connection that pressed against his mind. Not words but feelings, pain, loneliness, the endless burden of surviving on a world where everything kills or dies. He took a step forward, slowly lowering his weapon. "You're not my enemy," he said softly, "and I'm not yours." For a long moment the creature just breathed, the sound echoing through the cavern like thunder underwater. Then it tilted its head slightly, studying him, and then it turned and walked deeper into the dark, glancing back once as if to say, "Follow." Eli hesitated only a heartbeat before moving after it. Deeper into the glowing heart of Ragnar 9. The walls pulsed brighter with every step. The hum grew faster, matching his heartbeat, and far ahead the cavern opened into a vast chamber filled with light. Ancient machines buried in crystal, and at the center, a giant black sphere suspended by invisible force. It pulsed like a living organ, each beat sending a wave through the ground. Eli stopped beside the creature, staring at the sphere that seemed to breathe. He whispered under his breath, "What are you?" And the creature looked at him with eyes that seemed to hold the entire history of the planet. For the first time since his exile, Eli did not feel alone. He didn't know whether he had found an ally, a god, or something in between. But one truth burned clear inside him. The planet was not trying to kill him. It was testing him. It was waiting to see if he was worthy. Outside, storms began to form again, red lightning crackling across the horizon. The Deathworld was waking, and Eli Vance had just been accepted into its heartbeat. The creature led him through a tunnel that twisted downward like a throat into the heart of the planet. The air was thick and warm. Glowing veins of crystal pulsed softly under the walls as if guiding their path. Eli moved carefully, his footsteps echoing in rhythm with the beast's low breathing. He had long stopped questioning why he followed. It felt less like a choice and more like gravity pulling him toward something inevitable. The tunnel opened into a vast underground valley where light shimmered from pools of molten blue liquid. The air trembled with power, old and patient. The creature stepped ahead and released a sound, a deep rumble that shook the ground yet somehow felt like speech. Eli froze, watching as smaller beasts emerged from the shadows, their eyes reflecting the glow like mirrors. They surrounded him in silence, not attacking, simply watching as though waiting for permission. The large one, Thyrax, the name came to him uninvited. A whisper in his mind moved closer, towering above him. It lowered its head until its gaze met his. For a moment Eli saw flashes again, not in front of him but behind his eyes. A vision of stars collapsing, ships burning, and ancient beings walking across the void. He stumbled back, gasping. But the images faded as quickly as they came, leaving behind a strange understanding. This world wasn't chaos, it was memory. Every mountain, every storm, every creature carried pieces of what had come before. Thyrax studied him with slow intelligence, tilting its massive head. Eli raised his hands, showing no threat. "You know I'm not from here," he said quietly, "but I didn't come to harm your world." His voice echoed through the cavern, and the smaller creatures backed away as if they understood. Thyrax made another sound, lower this time, almost gentle. It brushed its armored snout against his shoulder, the touch rough and cold. And for the first time Eli felt something impossible: trust. He stayed in the valley for what might have been days or weeks. Time lost meaning. He hunted strange animals with the help of Thyrax, learning how to use the planet's natural energy to craft tools from bones that sang when struck. He found plants that glowed faintly when near heat and used them for light. His body hardened. His movements grew precise. His skin bore scars that felt like stories carved by survival. Every night he sat beside the creature, staring into the blue pools that reflected both man and monster. "You're not a beast," he would whisper. "You're a guardian." Thyrax would blink slowly, and Eli could swear it understood. They hunted together, fought together, and when storms came, they took shelter under the ruins that had once belonged to a forgotten race. In those ruins, Eli discovered carvings, humanoid figures standing beside creatures like Thyrax, not in battle but in unity. One night, while the wind howled above the surface, Eli dreamed again. This time he saw a city made of light, built across the stars, and in its center stood beings that looked almost human but taller. Their eyes like fire. They spoke in tones he couldn't understand. And behind them lay Ragnar Daheim, lush and green, untouched by storms. The vision shifted, showing the same beings arguing, dividing, turning on each other. The sky burned, and the beasts rose from the earth to defend something buried deep. When Eli woke, his chest ached as if he'd lived the memory himself. He turned to Thyrax, whispering, "You remember, don't you?" The creature looked at him, and in that silence he could feel it, yes. It remembered not as a thought but as instinct. Generations of memory woven into flesh. The realization struck him with awe and sadness. "You were their creation," he said softly. "Their protector, and when they vanished, you were left to guard what they couldn't." From that day, their bond deepened. They hunted the metallic beasts that roamed the plains, fought storms that cracked the earth open, and when Eli was wounded, Thyrax shielded him with its body once. When a storm of glass shards tore through the valley, he saw the creature's blood for the first time, silver light that healed as it fell. He reached out, his hand trembling, and touched the glowing wound. The light spread briefly into his skin, burning but leaving no scar. He gasped as his heartbeat matched the creature's, a strange connection forming between them. The planet began to change around them. Storms grew quieter where they walked. Plants that once tried to strangle him now bent slightly as he passed. The hum beneath the ground grew steady and slow. Almost like breathing, it was as if Ragnar Daheim had accepted him, reshaping itself around the bond between human and guardian. Yet far above, in the cold silence of orbit, something else stirred. The Council had received strange readings from Ragnar Daheim, energy patterns that should have been impossible. They sent new probes, and one of them captured a grainy image of a human walking beside a beast taller than a starship's hull. The image spread across the networks of the galaxy like fire. Some called it a miracle, others called it heresy, but for the Council it was fear down below. Eli was unaware of the eyes now watching. He stood at the edge of a glowing ridge beside Thyrax, staring at the horizon where lightning struck the same spot again and again. "You feel it too, don't you?" he said. "Something's coming." Thyrax's scales lifted slightly, a low rumble escaping its throat. The air carried a charge. Not from nature, but from machines above. He looked up, though he couldn't see the ships yet, and whispered, "They're coming for us." In that moment, something inside him shifted again. He wasn't the soldier they had sent to die. He was something else now, something the Council could not have predicted. He looked at Thyrax and smiled faintly, then let them come. As the storm built around them and thunder rolled across the planet like war drums, Eli placed his hand against the creature's chest, feeling its massive heartbeat echo through his bones. Two survivors from different worlds standing side by side, one made of flesh, one of legend, both bound by the will to live. The planet trembled beneath their feet. Not in anger, but in anticipation. Ragnar Daheim was awake, and the galaxy had no idea what it had just disturbed. The first ship appeared as a streak of silver cutting through the red clouds. Its engines roared like thunder as it descended toward the Deathworld. Commander Eli Vance stood on the ridge beside Thyrax, the wind tugging at his torn uniform. He had felt this coming for days, the strange stillness in the storms, the way the planet's heartbeat had slowed as if holding its breath. Above them, more ships broke through the atmosphere, each one carrying the emblem of the Galactic Council, the same symbol that had once sentenced him to die. The sky darkened as the fleet spread across the horizon, metallic wings glinting under lightning from orbit. The aliens watched in silence as the human they had exiled stood alive on a world meant to kill him. Sensors confirmed what no one wanted to believe. He was not only surviving, he was commanding. Beside him towered a creature thought to exist only in myth, a beast from the Council's earliest nightmares. Eli didn't flinch when the first message echoed through the clouds. A deep synthetic voice carried by the storm. Human Commander Eli Vance, by decree of the Galactic Council. You're to be detained and returned for judgment. He let out a small laugh, cold and bitter. You already judged me, he whispered. The air crackled as Thyrax released a low growl, its eyes glowing faint silver. The creature felt his anger, mirrored it. The wind shifted as if the planet itself was listening. He knew what the Council wanted, not his surrender, not his silence. They wanted to erase the story before it spread, before other humans learned that the Deathworld had accepted one of their own. He looked up at the fleet and raised his voice. You think this place is a prison, but it's a kingdom. And you made me its king. Lightning split the clouds. Striking the ground behind him, the ships began to fire, energy beams slicing through the air, exploding across the ridges. The ground shook violently, but Eli didn't move. He turned to Thyrax and shouted above the storm, Show them what your world remembers. The creature raised its head to the heavens and released a roar so powerful that the air itself tore apart. Waves of sound rippled through the clouds, breaking the formation of the approaching ships. From the valleys and caverns, other beasts stirred, hundreds of them, rising from beneath the soil, from the molten rivers, from the ruins of the forgotten city. Their eyes lit up like constellations beneath the storm. The ground became alive, the air a chorus of ancient voices. Eli felt the pulse under his feet, the same rhythm he had heard in the planet's hum. Now amplified, now angry, the first squadron of alien fighters dove toward the surface, firing plasma rounds that scorched the land. But the energy scattered uselessly across the beast's armor. The creatures moved with terrifying grace, tearing through metal as if it were paper. Thyrax leaped into the air, wings of light unfolding from its back like a storm-given form. It crashed into a ship, crushing it mid-flight, the explosion lighting the entire valley. Eli shielded his face from the heat, his heart pounding not from fear but awe. He moved through the chaos like a shadow, finding shelter among the rocks and directing the smaller creatures with gestures he didn't fully understand. They listened to him, obeyed him as if the planet itself was channeling his intent. It was no longer man commanding beast, it was unity, survival, vengeance shared by two species that had both been forgotten. Far above, in the Council's command vessel, the alien officers watched in horror as their instruments failed. Storms formed where none should exist. Magnetic fields twisted their engines. One officer turned to the Chancellor and whispered, The planet is responding to him. He's controlling it. But the Chancellor shook his head, his voice trembling. No, he's not controlling it. It's protecting him. On the surface, Eli's lungs burned with smoke as he pushed through the battlefield. The smell of ozone and molten metal filled the air. He stumbled upon the wreckage of a fallen ship and tore open the cockpit door. Inside, an alien soldier reached for his weapon, but Eli's hand was faster. He pressed the knife against the creature's throat and met its terrified eyes. You could have left me alone, he said quietly. You could have let me live. He lowered the blade and stepped back. Now watch what you've created. The creature didn't move as Eli turned away, disappearing back into the storm. Above him, Thyrax landed hard, the ground cracking under its weight. Its scales shimmered with heat and blood. Eli placed a hand against its chest, feeling that familiar pulse. They'll keep coming, he murmured. They'll never stop. The beast lowered its head until their eyes met. In that silent exchange, Eli felt something like a promise. They would stand together until the end. The battle raged for hours, maybe days. The line between man and world blurred until there was no difference. The Deathworld fought not for vengeance but for balance, for the memory of everything it had lost. When the final explosion faded and the storm settled into a soft red glow, Eli stood on a ridge overlooking the wreckage of the fleet. The sky was filled with smoke and falling debris. His uniform was torn, his hands burned, but his eyes were calm. He could feel the weight of what he had done, not as guilt, but as truth. He was no longer the man who had stood in chains before the Council. He had become something new, something they could never understand around him. The surviving creatures bowed their heads, their glowing eyes fixed on him. Even the storm quieted, waiting. Eli took a breath, his voice soft but steady. This is not the end, he said. It's the beginning of what you all feared far above. The remaining Council ships retreated into orbit, broadcasting static-filled messages across the galaxy. Rumors spread faster than light. Some said the human had died. Others said he had become one with the planet. But those who saw the last transmission knew the truth. A man stood beside a creature the size of a mountain, the storm behind him parting like a curtain, and his words carried across the stars, calm and certain. "You sent me here to die," he said, "but instead, you taught me how to live." As the image faded, the council chambers across the galaxy fell silent, and for the first time in centuries, fear returned to those who ruled on Ragnar 9. Eli stood beneath the burning sky as the wind brushed across his face. The storm was gone. The silence heavy but alive, he looked at Thyrax, and the creature lowered its head in acknowledgement. Together they turned toward the horizon where the lightning slept, waiting for the next dawn that would come not with peace, but with purpose. The Deathworld had found its voice, and it spoke through him. The fires of the fallen fleet burned across the horizon, turning the red sky into a canvas of smoke and ruin. Commander Eli Vance stood among the wreckage, the metallic scent of ash filling his lungs. The bodies of alien soldiers lay scattered across the black earth. Their armor cracked, their ships split open like eggshells. The storm clouds above swirled in silence, as if the world itself was waiting for what came next. Beside him, Thyrax exhaled a deep rumble that rolled through the valley. The beast's eyes glowed faint silver in the dark, reflecting not victory but understanding. Eli's body was bruised and bleeding, his arm wrapped in makeshift bandages torn from the uniform of an enemy. Each step sent pain up his leg, but he didn't stop. He moved slowly between the remains of the battle, touching the twisted hulls as if reading the story of each fallen machine. "You thought you could erase me," he murmured. "But this world doesn't forget." His voice carried across the field. Swallowed by the wind, the Deathworld was changing again. The storms were calmer, but the air carried strange whispers. The ground beneath him pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. The planet was alive in ways he could not explain, and he could feel its attention on him like unseen eyes. The creatures that had fought beside Thyrax now roamed quietly, their massive forms casting long shadows in the crimson light. They were guardians once more, no longer enraged but watchful. Patient as if awaiting his command, Eli climbed the ridge that overlooked the valley, his mind heavy with thoughts he didn't want to face. He had won the battle, but not the war. He knew the council would never accept what had happened here. They would come again, stronger, and they would not make the same mistake twice. Still, somewhere deep inside, a quiet defiance burned. He looked down at the valley of wreckage and whispered, "Then I'll be ready." That night, he sat beside Thyrax under the glow of the twin moons. The silence between them was not empty. It was full, filled with the shared memory of fire and survival. He reached out and rested his hand on the creature's neck, feeling the warmth beneath its armor-like scales. "You saved me," he said softly. Thyrax lowered its head, rumbling like distant thunder. Eli smiled faintly. "No," he added. "You gave me something better. You gave me a reason to fight again." When he slept, his dreams carried him beyond the planet. He saw stars dying, empires collapsing, and in the dark space between them, he saw himself not as a soldier or a prisoner, but as something in between, something the galaxy had not yet named. He woke before dawn, his mind echoing with a single truth. The war ahead was not just survival. It was awakening. Days passed in uneasy quiet. The creatures rebuilt their nests among the ruins using broken metal and crystal. The planet's hum grew louder, constant, steady, as though preparing for something. Eli studied the ancient symbols carved into the stone pillars near the ruins. The markings began to make sense now. The language was a form of resonance, not words but vibrations. Instructions left behind by the beings who had once ruled this place. He realized the planet was not a weapon or a prison. It was a guardian asleep beneath layers of death and time. And now it was beginning to stir. One evening, the sky split open again, not with ships but with light. A column of gold energy descended from the clouds. Striking the distant mountains, Eli and Thyrax turned. Toward it, the air trembled and a low hum filled every living thing. "They're trying to reach us," Eli said. "Not with guns this time. With something worse." He could feel it in his bones. The council was no longer underestimating him. They were calling on powers older than their own laws. He and Thyrax began their march toward the light, moving through forests of black crystal that hummed softly under their feet. The creatures of the world followed, forming a silent procession behind them. Eli could feel their unity, their faith in him. Though he had never asked for it, he was no leader, but he had become the bridge between man and world. The realization both humbled and haunted him. As they neared the mountains, the air grew dense with energy. The light pulsed in rhythm with his heart, and his vision blurred. Images flickered before him. Cities of the past. Beings of light crafting the first guardians, their hands glowing with creation. He saw Thyrax among them, young, radiant, proud. Then the vision twisted, showing fire, betrayal, and exile. He fell to his knees, gasping. "They tried to destroy you," he whispered. "And they failed." Thyrax stepped forward, its gaze locked on the beam, the ancient roar building in its chest. From the beam, figures emerged, shimmering forms of energy taking shape as alien soldiers wrapped in luminous armor. They carried no weapons, yet the air around them burned. One of them spoke, the voice echoing from every direction at once. "Human, you have awakened what should have stayed buried. You do not understand what you serve." Eli stood, his body shaking but his eyes steady. "You sent me here to die," he said. "But I found life. You called this world cursed, but it's the only place that still remembers what your kind destroyed." The beings regarded him with something close to sorrow. "You are bound to it now," they said. "When it rises, it will not stop with you." He stepped closer, the wind tearing at his clothes. "Then let it rise," he said, his voice steady. "Let the galaxies see what happens when you push too far." The beings flickered, their forms trembling, the golden light dimming as the mountain beneath them began to move. The ground split open, and from its core rose a structure of impossible size, a tower of black and silver that pulsed with the rhythm of the planet's heart. Thyrax roared, wings unfurling in a blast of wind. Eli looked up, the reflection of the light burning in his eyes. "This is not destruction," he whispered. "It's awakening." The energy erupted skyward, scattering the beings into fragments of light that vanished into the clouds. The tower continued to rise, reaching toward the stars. The Deathworld's true face was emerging, and the universe would never be the same. As the night turned to dawn, Eli stood on the mountain's edge, his hand resting on Thyrax's shoulder. The air shimmered with the hum of new life. He could feel the planet breathing through him now, their hearts beating as one in the silence that followed. He spoke softly, almost to himself. "They'll call this a rebellion," he said, "but really, it's a homecoming." The wind carried his words into the rising light, and for the first time since his exile, Eli felt no fear, only destiny. The tower kept rising long after the dawn had broken. Its vast shadow stretched across the valleys of Ragnar 9, swallowing forests and mountains beneath its reach. The hum that once whispered softly beneath the soil now thundered like the heartbeat of a god. Eli stood near its base, the light from its surface washing across his face. The tower wasn't built from stone or metal, it was alive, every wall pulsing with veins of molten silver. It felt like standing before the skeleton of the planet itself, newly awakened after eons of silence. Thyrax stood beside him, wings folded, eyes reflecting the shifting glow. The air around them rippled with strange energy that made Eli's skin prickle. He could feel it under his bones, a rhythm that matched his own heartbeat. The planet and he were no longer separate. He didn't know when it had happened, but he could feel its pulse within him. Every vibration, every breath of wind tied to his will. From the tower's peak, golden storms coiled into the sky like threads of light reaching for the stars. The world that had once been called cursed was now becoming something new, something awake. But with awakening came attention, and across the galaxy sensors blazed with warnings. Fleets scrambled, empires stirred. What had once been a myth was now a signal echoing through the void. Eli watched the horizon darken as new ships appeared, not of the Council this time, but of other races, curious or afraid, drawn by the impossible power rising from the Deathworld. He could almost hear the whispers across the stars. The humans survived, and the planet rose for him. He turned to Thyrax, his voice low. "They'll come, all of them, not just to kill me, but to claim what they think I found." The creature tilted its head, a low rumble rising from its chest. Eli smiled faintly. "Yeah, I know. Let them try." The first ships entered the atmosphere hours later, sleek and bright like shards of ice. They did not attack at once. Instead, they hovered above the valley, broadcasting messages in every known galactic language. "Human Commander Eli Vance," the voice said, calm but distant. "You are interfering with classified Council technology. Surrender the structure and your life will be spared." Eli looked up at the voice echoing through the storm. "You still think this belongs to you," he muttered. He raised his hand, the ground beneath him trembling in answer. The tower pulsed once, and the wind changed direction. He could feel the Deathworld focusing through him, a vast consciousness like the weight of an ocean behind his thoughts. He wasn't controlling it, he was part of it. The fleet began to descend, their weapons glowing in the sky like false stars. Thyrax spread its wings and roared, the sound carrying for miles, shaking dust from the cliffs. The ground split open as other creatures emerged, some with wings, some with shells that glowed like mirrors. All bound to the same will, they gathered around the tower, forming an unspoken line of defense. Eli stepped forward, his voice rising with the storm. "You call this world a death world because it mirrors what you fear most," he shouted. "It doesn't destroy out of hate, it destroys what doesn't belong." His words were carried by the wind, reaching even the ships above. For a moment there was silence, a hesitation. Then the sky erupted. Beams of plasma tore through the clouds, explosions lighting the horizon. The beasts roared in unison, answering the violence with fury. The air burned with color, blue, white, and red streaks crossing the heavens. Eli moved like a man caught between worlds, his body human, his soul something else. Each time he lifted his arm, the earth responded, throwing arcs of molten light that struck the ships, tearing them apart. Thyrax leaped into the storm, smashing one of the descending craft mid-air, fire spilling across its wings like sunlight. Eli could feel the creature's pain when shrapnel pierced its side. He stumbled, clutching his chest, the bond between them glowing through his veins like liquid fire. He shouted, "Stay with me!" and the beast roared back, its fury renewing. The tower began to glow brighter, sending waves of energy into the sky that warped the air itself. The surviving ships pulled back, their sensors overwhelmed. In orbit, alien commanders screamed orders, unable to understand what they were witnessing. The Deathworld wasn't just offending, it was evolving. The energy spreading from the tower was rewriting the very laws of the planet, turning every storm, every rock, every breath into part of its will. Eli fell to his knees, the power coursing through him too much to contain. He felt his body breaking under the strain, memories flashing before his eyes. Earth, his unit the day the Council exiled him, the laughter of the aliens who thought humans were fragile. And then through the pain another memory surfaced. The first day he met Thyrax. The first time he felt the world accept him. He smiled through the agony. "Not fragile," he whispered. "Just learning." The storm reached its peak, swallowing the sky. The tower released a final surge of light so bright it turned night into day. The fleet disintegrated in silence, their forms erased as if the world itself refused their existence. The sound faded, the light dimmed, and for a long moment, there was nothing but wind and ash. When the dust settled, Eli stood again, his eyes reflecting the same faint silver glow as Thyrax's. His wounds were gone, his skin faintly illuminated by the energy that now lived inside him. The planet's hum was no longer beneath his feet. It was within him. The creatures bowed their heads, the storms calmed, and the tower's glow softened into a heartbeat that matched his own. He looked up at the empty sky, his voice quiet. "They'll send more," he said. "They'll never stop trying to control what they don't understand." He glanced at Thyrax, who stood beside him like a mountain alive with light. "But neither will we." The beast bent its head, brushing against his shoulder. And for the first time Eli felt peace. The Deathworld had claimed him, not as a prisoner but as its voice, far beyond the planet. In the cold halls of the Council's command citadel, silence reigned. The last transmission from Ragnar the Nine showed a man standing beneath a glowing tower, his eyes shining like stars, and behind him, the shape of something vast and alive. The Chancellor's voice trembled as he whispered, "He's become part of it." Back on the surface, Eli stood on the ridge overlooking the new dawn. The light from the tower painted the clouds gold. The world was quiet again, alive but calm. He reached out, feeling the heartbeat of a planet that had once been called death, and said, softly, "Then let them come." The wind carried his words across the land, through forests and ruins and the bones of forgotten giants, and for the first time in galactic memory, Ragnar 9 was no longer silent. It was awake, and it had a voice, and that voice spoke with the heart of a human. The morning sky over Ragnar 9 glowed with colors that did not exist on any other world. Gold bled into crimson, silver melted into blue, as if the planet itself was painting a farewell. Eli Vance stood on the ridge where it had all begun, the broken wreckage of alien ships now half buried under vines of metallic roots. The great tower behind him pulsed slowly, a living monument to everything that had awakened. Its light reached far into the heavens, brushing against the cold stars like a reminder that even death could grow from ruin. Thyrax stood beside him, wings folded, eyes calm and knowing. The world around them had gone quiet, no storms, no fire, only the hum of life settling after the fury. The Deathworld had survived. And so had he, but both had changed. He felt it deep in his bones. The link between man and world no longer a whisper. It was a pulse that moved through every living thing. When he breathed, the planet breathed. When he closed his eyes, he could feel every heartbeat of the creatures that had fought beside them. He looked toward the horizon, where a new fleet shimmered faintly against the blackness of space. The Council had not given up. Of course they hadn't, he smiled faintly, a tired but knowing smile. They still don't understand, he said. His voice was low, more thought than sound. Thyrax tilted its head, the faint hum in its throat matching the rhythm of the tower. They think this is about power, Eli whispered. But it was always about belonging. He remembered the man he had been, the soldier exiled in chains, broken by laws made by creatures who believed humanity had no place among the stars. Now he stood taller, not as a conqueror, but as something more ancient. He no longer carried weapons, he didn't need to. The world itself would defend him, yet even now, he felt no hatred toward those who had sent him here. Only a strange sorrow. They had feared the Deathworld because they saw in it everything they tried to bury. The wild, untamed will to live, the refusal to kneel. The wind rose softly, carrying voices that were not voices, memories that flowed through the air like echoes. He heard the cries of the ancient builders, the fall of their cities, the song they left behind in the stones. They had once done what he had done. They had touched the living heart of this planet and become part of it. But fear had consumed them too, and they had turned their gift into silence. Eli placed his hand against the earth, feeling its warmth beneath his palm. Not this time, he said quietly. You won't fade again. The ground beneath him responded with a faint tremor, not violent, but alive. The creatures that had fought in the great battle began to gather once more, emerging from the forests, the canyons, the rivers, hundreds of them silent and waiting. Their eyes glowed like stars reflected on water. Eli looked at them and felt their thoughts, not in words, but in emotion. Trust, loyalty, peace. He turned to Thyrax and nodded. It's time. They moved toward the tower, the creatures following in solemn unity. The light from the structure grew brighter as they approached. Shifting from silver to pure white, the air thickened. Humming with a sound that was neither thunder nor music, Eli could feel it calling to him. The same voice that had guided him since the day he fell here. He knew what it wanted now, not control, not worship, but connection. It was not a machine, it was the soul of Ragnar Nime itself. And it was offering him something he did not yet understand. He stopped before the tower's base. The light bathing his face, he looked up into it and spoke softly. You've given me everything, now take what you need. The light enveloped him. Warm and endless, his body began to dissolve, not into death but into energy, into the living pulse of the world. His voice echoed calm and sure. If they return, tell them I never left, Thyrax roared, a deep, mournful sound that carried across the land. The creatures bowed their heads as the light consumed the man who had become part of them. When it faded, Eli was gone, but the air still shimmered where he had stood, and the heartbeat of the planet grew steady, powerful, alive. Above, in the void, the approaching fleet halted as their sensors lit with impossible readings. The surface of Ragnar Nam glowed brighter than any sun. The energy patterns were not weapon signatures, they were frequencies of life, synchronized across every corner of the planet. The ships began to lose control, their systems overwhelmed by interference that wasn't interference at all. It was communication. A message carried through light and gravity, across the bridge of the lead vessel. The council officers stared at their monitors as words appeared on every screen, ancient yet familiar, written in the human language they had once mocked. This world is not dead, this world remembers. Leave it be. In that moment, silence swept through the fleet. Not out of command, but reverence. They turned their ship slowly away, engines burning against the glow of a planet reborn. Back on the surface, Thyrax lifted its head toward the rising suns. Its wings opened, scattering dust into gold. In the wind there was a sound, not thunder, not storm, but a heartbeat. Human and eternal. The tower stood tall, its light calm now, gentle like a promise kept, and somewhere deep within its core, in the rhythm of the planet itself, a voice spoke softly, not as words but as presence. I am still here. Ragnar 9 breathed again, no longer a death world but something greater, a world with a soul and the memory of the man who had awakened it. The legend would spread across the stars, the tale of the human who came to die but instead became the heart of a world. The council would hide it, deny it, rewrite it, but whispers would remain, told in quiet corners of ships and stations. He came back with the beast as his friend, and the death world itself as his home. The storms never returned, the silence never fell again, and when the wind moved through the canyons, it carried a name that no alien dared to forget. Eli Vance, the human of Ragnar 9, the voice of a world that refused to die.